Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 7 of my object-oriented design tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to take the sequence diagram we designed in part 5 and 6 and transfer it into a class diagram. So let's get into it. Okay, so on the left side of our screen, we have the sequence diagram, and I zoomed in here real close so you'll be able to see it. And over here on the right side, I'm just using a text editor this time to make sure everything's real big so you can see it. I'm going to transfer everything on the left into class diagrams on the right. So let's just start off here. And here's test ATM, which is going to be my default name for my application during my testing phase. And I see account is here. So let's go right in and let's create account. So there's the class. And then I got to think about, okay, now what fields am I going to need? Well, then I'm just going to take these fields here, like bank ID and customer name and account type, and I'm going to transfer them over here. So we have bank ID, and what is it? It's an integer. So then, and the negative sign here is for private. Then I'm going to go customer name, and what's that? It's a string. Real simple. And then I'm going to go account type, and what is it? It's a string. And then, just so I don't forget it here, I also have these guys up here, account type and these little notes. I want to make sure that I pay attention to these little notes. And one thing I have here is account number. And I have that pointed towards account, so that means I'm also going to have to include account number. And just to make sure that it's important, I'm going to stick it up here closer to the top. And that is also going to be an integer. And we also see here account number incrementer. I'm going to need this guy as well to keep track of all my different accounts. And strip number, I'm also going to need that. And then I also need to get all these other different guys inside of here. So after account type, I'm also going to go and track account balance. And this is going to be a double. And then I'm also going to track PIN, because PIN is right here. See, I'm just copying everything from the left side of the screen over to the right. And strip number is also an int. And, oh, I almost forgot, account number incrementer. That's going to keep track of all my different accounts as I create them. And that is also going to be an int. And another thing, as you can see, it is going to start off at 100,000. So I'm going to also go in here and give it a default value of 100,000. And this is going to be a static. I can't underline in this silly text editor, so just remember that's a static. And whenever you're creating class diagrams, that all your statics should be underlined. So just remember that. Well, then I got to think about, okay, well, what methods am I going to need in this account? Well, one of them is going to be this constructor right here. So I just need to go and copy this constructor over to this side. So just type in account, and then I need to type in all my attributes and classes and so forth. So bank ID, int, customer name, string, account type, which is going to be a string, and account balance, which is going to be a double, and then finally PIN, which is going to be an integer. And it has no return value, so we're just going to throw void inside of there. And there you go, there's the constructor. Now just to separate this out, now I got to think about, okay, well, what other types of methods am I going to need here? Now I don't often think that much here. I just throw everything in that I think I might need. So I'm going to go get bank ID, and that's going to provide me access to my bank ID if I need it. Get account number, and I'm just taking everything from the top here, all of the different fields that I've defined and typing them in. That's it. Now this is going to save you an immense amount of time, and this is why I said before the sequence diagrams are extremely important. Get account type, and everything that I do here is going to be available in a link underneath the video, and of course it's free just like always. Move that up a little bit. And somebody actually said to me something about the importance of sequence diagrams. One thing I never thought of to tell you guys is that whenever I am making these tutorials and I say I have a little thing of notes in front of me that I'm working off of, because a lot of you guys think I do this 100% out of my head, which I don't, but what I do have is a sequence diagram that I scribbled out on paper. Just handwritten sequence diagram. That's what I make almost every single tutorial off of. So yes, indeed, I think sequence diagrams are very important. And as you can see, I'm just cranking out this stuff right here. And a class diagram is pretty much one step away from finished code. So there's the strip number, and that is going to return an int. Well, then I got to think about some other different things that I'm going to need here. Like, for example, how is the strip number going to be created for our ATM card? Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. See, here's the strip number, which I'm going to be creating. I think it makes a lot of sense to generate that that strip number inside of the account whenever the account is created. So I'm going to go in here and go generate strip number, and you can actually see that that is coming from here. So I have generate strip number, da 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 da. See? It's already in my sequence diagram. Generate strip number, get strip number by adding bank ID to account number incrementer. See, it's right there. So I'm just following exactly what I got in front of me. I'm making this stuff up. There's that. And then generate account number. That's something else that I should do. And here's account number. It's going to be strip number with 1 or 2 from account type at the end. Makes a lot of sense to do all of this whenever we are creating the account. And one thing that I left out of the sequence diagram is normally when I create them, I also include all of the attributes because they're just so easy for me when I'm creating the sequence diagram to just write them down and save the programmer that comes after me some time. So based off of the sequence diagram, that's all I need to do for account. So now we come down to what is the next class? Well, I just have to look here, and here we created account right there. What did we create next? Card. So the next thing we're going to create in our class diagram is a card. Now what is the card going to need? Don't really have a whole lot of information here. I got a PIN and a strip number, but for the most part that's all I'm going to need because that's what the sequence diagram tells me is all I need. See, as a programmer looking at a sequence diagram, I don't want to really think. My job isn't to think. My job is to do exactly what the sequence diagram tells me to do. And then I have to also think about, okay, well, what are going to be the different methods that are going to be needed? Well, of course, I'm going to need a constructor. However, I don't just want to jump in here. I want to also make sure that there's not any other information here that I want to take advantage of. So here you can see that it's getting past a PIN as well as a strip number. This is a constructor for the card. So I want to create that guy. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in PIN, just recreating what's on the left side of the screen. And I also want to type in strip number because that's what it's telling me to do. And that's also going to be an int. And does it return anything? No, because the sequence diagram says it doesn't, and that is it. However, if I look through this, you shouldn't just willy-nilly just fly through this. However, later on as you're going through, and like I said before, this was a design that I created just so I could tear it apart and say how I should improve it. But either way, as we're coming down here, you see, is strip readable? Well, as I'm looking at the sequence diagram, then I see that the PIN is entered. Well, up here, that means that the card, when it is created, doesn't have a PIN. So what am I going to need to do? I'm going to need to create another constructor that only has a strip number inside of it. So I'm going to go and just do exactly that. And because it is a smaller constructor, I am also going to paste it inside of there. That's just something that I do. You don't have to do it that way. What other things might I need? Well, I might need to get my PIN because I'm just returning the attributes that I know I'm going to use. Another thing that I'm going to need to do probably is get my strip number. So want to return that. And what are some other things? Well, I might have to set my PIN at some point in time if the user wants to change that PIN. Definitely something I could see occurring. And this is pretty much the only thinking that the programmer's ever really going to do is these added on attributes. So it's very easy just to add all of them. So we're going to say strip number is going to be passed over, and it's an integer, and a void. It returns nothing. So there we go. Now we created card. So what's the next thing we got to create? Well, let's look at our sequence diagram to find out. We can see there is account, there's card, and then customer is going to be created. So what type of attributes is customer going to need? Well, you can see right here, customer's ATM card is passed over whenever the customer is created, kind of like the ATM card being mailed to the customer. So what sort of things am I going to need here? Well, let's just scroll this guy up, and this is going to be called customer. And what fields are we going to need in classes and so forth? Well, we're going to need customer ATM card because that's what was passed over to it. And what else am I going to need? Well, I'm going to need some methods here. One of them is going to be customer, which is going to be the constructor, and I'm going to go new ATM card, which is going to be of type card, right like that, and it's going to return nothing. And all I'm doing here is just copying this constructor right here. And then does it tell me to do anything else? No, not really. So what are one of the things I might want to add on here, just being a programmer and thinking, hey, I feel like we should be able to access this card. Well, there you go. All the sequence diagram tells me to do is basically to create this guy right here and to create this guy right here. As the programmer, I shouldn't think. I should just follow directions. So that was easy. Let's see what else we might need here. So we created a customer. Now we need to create a BankComputer. So let's create it. by looking at the constructor. It's getting passed a bank name. So go like this, BankComputer. And what are some of the things we're going to need here? BankComputer, da-da-da-da-da. BankComputer, everything is continued as designed in the first design. So let's just come down here. Well, we could just go and create this method since we're already looking at it. BankComputer. And it is going to be new bank name. So we're just giving our banks a name whenever we create them. And they are going to be returning nothing. And that's just the constructor we're going to be using here. So that's easy. So what are the other things we're going to need here? So let's scroll through. Also, we could look here and see if we see BankComputer anywhere else on the sequence diagram, which right now I don't see anything there. Da-da-da-da-da. And here is BankComputer. Now remember, this is going to be the BankComputer that holds all of the accounts inside of an array list. Check if the BankComputer bank ID equals transaction. So what does that tell you? That means that bank ID is going to be needed for BankComputer. See, this is one of the reasons why I always include all the attributes inside of my sequence diagram, even though you're not supposed to. And I also know that this is going to start off at 9 because of another note that I have here on the screen. So I'm just going to throw that in. And then what else am I going to need? Well, bank name, of course, because bank name's down here. So bank name, and that's going to be a string. Anything else I'm going to need? Well, I just mentioned before that the BankComputer holds all of the accounts inside of it, and you're not supposed to type out things like array list, but I do it, especially when I know that the person I'm working with is going to be working in Java. Otherwise, I wouldn't do that. I would just have account listed here. And then let's look and see what else we're going to do here. Verify the PIN, da-da-da-da-da, BankComputer, transaction. The only other thing I could think of is, since this is an array list, in that situation, we're probably going to want to monitor the number of banks that we have. And that is just something that is done whenever we have an array list, so that we know how many items are in that array list, and we got them outside here and we can check it real easy. And this guy's going to be a static as well, which means if it's class diagram, it's going to be underlined. Okay, so that gets us down here into the methods, and that's all our sequence diagram says we need. So what are we going to need to do? Well, we're going to have a way to add bank accounts to this guy, and this is a method that always is going to be included anytime that you are creating array lists. And there we go. So we had the ability to add accounts. What else are we going to need? Well, we're going to have to be able to get bank ID, because that's another rule. Anytime you have any attributes up here, you want to provide a way to get to them, and that's going to be an integer. What else are we going to need? Well, let's look here and see exactly what's going on with this guy. And if we do, find bank associated with card. Remember, I changed this in the last part of the tutorial. And you can also see here's add account to bank, and there's BankComputer. See, that's where that guy comes from. I had that in the sequence diagram. Good on me. I made a good decision there. And I could see a whole bunch of mentions here. Is ATM Card's bank in network? And I can also see mentions over here. Is strip readable? So that tells me that a good method to have inside of here is to verify the strip number. And how are we going to do that? Well, the card is going to be passed in right like that. And then I'm going to return a Boolean that's going to say whether it is readable or not. See, Boolean. So there that is. What else are we going to need? Well, let's look down here in the bottom. Verify the PIN, which is going to get passed a transaction. So we're going to also want to use that. And as you're watching me do this, you're probably thinking, wow, that's too easy and da-da-da-da-da. Let me tell you, there's very few people that seem to be able to do this, even though it is so easy. It's just a matter of going through the process and seeing what needs to be done. Request withdraw amount, which is going to be a transaction. Request withdraw amount, and it's going to be past a transaction, which is a transaction. And there that is. And in that situation, we're not going to return anything. And there you go. So there's BankComputer. That's all done. So now what's next in our classes? Well, if we look here, we can actually see, like I have notes here, check if the BankComputer bank ID transaction, blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying here basically that everything that is being done to BankComputer also needs to be done to BankNetwork. And BankNetwork is going to be the very next thing created after BankComputer. Here's BankComputer, and where's BankNetwork? There's BankNetwork, so we got that right there. But let's also come in here, and let's look at the constructor. Wow, it doesn't do anything. So let's just come in here and start creating this. So we'll go bank network. There, that's created. And what's going to be needed to be stored inside of this? Well, basically, the only thing that we know of is going to be the array list of bank computers. Remember, bank computers hold a bunch of accounts, and then bank network holds a bunch of bank computers. So like, let's say we have 10 banks that are accessible from every ATM, and every ATM is tied into a bank network. That means we need access to all of those bank accounts. So let's go and define that. Banks in the database is something I'm going to throw inside of here. And this is just going to be an array list. Like I said, I'm putting this in here because I want them to know I want an array list created, and I know they're going to be programming this in Java. And if you're using another language, just use your other different ways of defining those different things, or just simply put that in there as BankComputer. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. Now, what else are we going to need to do? Well, we know that verify PIN and request withdrawal amount are going to be needed because we used them previously inside of BankComputer, and we know that those guys, if they are used inside of BankComputer, they're also going to be used inside of BankNetwork, so let's define them. What else do we know? Well, we know that we're going to have to be able to access or add all of our banks to our network because we have an array list here. So let's just do that, and we'll go add bank to network. And how are we going to do that? We're going to go new bank, which is going to be of type BankComputer, and there we go. Now we have that, and we're going to type in void here at the end. So there we got that. So that's simple. Anything else we need? Well, let's just scroll through here. Is strip readable? Is ATM Card's bank in network? Well, there's that guy, and that's going to be pointing down here into my ATM, and it also points down into network. So want to use that guy as well. Everything else continues as designed in the previous, so that's good. And you can also see here, add bank to network. Had that in my sequence diagram, even though I was smart enough in this situation to know that it should be there. So that's good, except this is the bank and I put the new bank, whatever. Maybe I'd want to jot a note that says that, but either way. So now we also know that we need to put this method in here because it's on the sequence diagram, so we're going to do it. We're just going to go is ATM Cards bank in network. And what are we going to do? We're going to pass a card to it. I'm going to say the card, and then the return type for this guy is going to be Boolean. Anything else that I'd like to do with this guy? I know there's a note here somewhere. Let's look. Scrolling around. I know I have a note written here somewhere where it says I should get the first 2 digits of the strip number to identify the bank ID. And here it is. See right here where I have bank network? Well, I'm verifying if the bank ID is correct. And here I'm verifying, whether it's correct or it's not correct. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, the beginning of the strip number is going to be the bank ID, which means I'm going to have to get the first 2 digits off of the strip number. So the final method that is defined here anyway, that I'm going to need to get is going to be those first 2 digits. So let's also go get first 2 digits, and we're just going to pass it strip number, which is going to be an integer, and it's going to return an int. Obviously, it's going to get the first 2 digits off of that, and I think that might be something that's going to be handy in the future, so I'm going to mark that as static, which means as a class diagram it would be underlined. So that's going to be a static method for me, so I'll be able to access it from other classes. So now what do I need to do? Let's just come up here. We created BankComputer, we created BankNetwork. So, here comes ATM. So what are we going to have to do for ATM? Well, one of the things we're going to have to do, you can see here, we're creating a transaction from ATM. So we're going to have that capability. And also, ATM is going to be created by passing it the bank network. So let's go in here to this guy right here. And let's create this class called ATM. And remember I said that it is going to be holding transactions. So I'm going to go the transaction, and it's going to be of type transaction because that's defined in that sequence diagram. Make sure that's uppercase. What else are we going to need here? Well, let's just look. I see here ATM, which is going to be the bank network that's being passed in here. So I'm just going to create that guy right now since it's right in front of my face. So I'm going to go network of banks. on ATM and go network, and this is going to be a bank network. So there is the constructor for creating my ATM. And what am I going to need? Well, I got this inside of here, so I'm definitely going to need this guy because it's also going to be in my constructor. So I'm just going to save that attribute right there. And I also know the user is going to be inputting stuff inside of the ATM. This is another thing that would normally be in my notes down below. So I'm going to provide for user input because, you know, it's an ATM. There's no use for its existence if the user can't enter information. And I'm also going to mark that as static. So that's going to be underlined as well. And it doesn't say that I need to do anything else here, so I'm not going to do anything else. So let's look at ATM. What exactly is it doing here? You can see all of these guys line up with ATM. So is strip readable? There's something that I need to do. Is strip readable. And how are we going to find it? Well, there's going to be a card that's going to be passed inside of here. Pretty simple stuff. And what are we going to do? Well, it's a question, so we're going to return a Boolean. Anything else? Is ATM's cards bank in our network? So there's something else. Is ATM cards bank in network? Something else we got to do. And it's going to get passed a card just like it says there, and it's a question, and it's going to return a Boolean as well. There's the Boolean part. Anything else that we need to do here? Well, insert pin. See, I'm just copying this. It's just pretty much copy and paste. So insert pin, and what's it going to get? It's going to get a card, right like that, and it's also going to get a pin. Because why? Because that's what it says to do. So I'm just listening to it, and it's a question, and the result is going to be a Boolean as well. So there's that guy. Pick account to access. Okay, I'll do that. Pick account to access. Like that. And void amount to withdraw. Amount to withdraw. And void. And then get transaction info. And that's going to print out all of the transaction information after everything's been processed. So now what do we need to do? Well, let's just use our sequence diagram to find out. There's BankComputer, there's ATM, and here is transaction. And this is going to be one of the final pieces. So let's just scroll up here and create our transaction, right like that. And then I wrote a ton of notes about what exactly we're going to do with transactions. So let's just scroll over here, and you can see it is right here. Receipt comes from transaction info, list the name, date, balance, withdrawal amount, account used for withdrawal, blah, 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 blah. So this is going to be the very last one. And basically here, all I'm going to do is think about, all right, what are all the different things that I'm going to need to return with a transaction? Well, bank ID, and in this situation, I'm going to have it do everything. I'm just going to type in every single thing that's on the left side here in this little note out here on the right side. Another thing, customer name, account balance, and this is why notes come in handy. I got everything that I need for my transaction right here on the screen, so that's cool. Withdraw amount, which is an integer, count number used, and then pin, which I'm going to store inside of here because inside of these guys I'm passing transaction over to this. See, transaction request withdrawal amount. See, transaction's being passed, so I'm going to put my pin in there, verify pin, see what's being passed, transaction. Again, that comes from these notes that I have here, so that's the reason why I have my pin inside of there. Strip number, because I'm verifying that the strip number is good as I go into the bank network. Account to withdraw from, which is going to be either checking or savings. And what else do we got here? Verify the PIN. Well, the final thing is going to be, did the card verify? Am I going to be able to actually do the transaction? So card verify, and that's going to hold a Boolean value. So then what do I need to do? Well, let's just scroll up here and let's look and see where is transaction created. There's transaction, and it's going to be created by passing over a strip number, which is going to be an integer. And it is going to return nothing. And then what am I going to do after that? I'm basically just going to put a thing in here that is going to allow me to get the bank IDs, get current dates, get customer name and all that for all of the things that I have up here above. That's it. Get bank ID, get customer name, set customer name with a void at the end, get current date time, turn that as a string because I need to print it out. Get pin. I'm going to put set pin inside of this just because I always, normally if I have a get, I put an int, but I can't imagine why I'd want to do that at this point in time. So that's probably something that's going to be cut out. And if I was doing this class diagram, I would draw a little note that said, hey, you know, this thing here probably not going to be here in the final piece. Get strip number, because all I'm doing is copying what is up above down below. Get strip number, int, set, did the card verify, because I had that little note up there that said I wanted to check that every time in BankComputer before I sent everything off. Or I wanted to check that every time I ran it through BankNetwork before I would send it over to the BankComputer, sort of like a security sort of thing. Also going to check here if my card verified. Spit that out. And I'm also going to throw in a whole bunch of things. Withdraw from what account, and I'm going to do the same thing for get account to withdraw from, and set withdraw amount, get withdraw amount, which is going to be another integer, get account number used, and then I would also want to have the option to change the account balance after I do my withdraw, and then finally get account balance. So there you go. There is a finished class diagram. Like I said, I have the whole entire thing underneath the video. You can take a look at it and look at it. But basically all we're going to do here is transfer the sequence diagram over into the class diagram. What we're doing. In the next part of the tutorial, I'm now going to use the sequence diagram and the class diagram to write all the code in a matter of a couple minutes. Leave any questions or comments below. Otherwise, till next time.